When we picture Tudor England, our minds go to the pristine, cinematic version. We imagine immaculate royal palaces, absolute monarchs, and staggering wealth. But the reality of London in 1536 hits your senses with a visceral shock. Step onto a common street, and you are immediately assaulted by the overwhelming stench of mud, sweat, and burning tallow, while trying not to trip over roaming pigs in dark, claustrophobic alleys where timber buildings literally lean against one another for support. Every citizen here navigated a daily obstacle course of lethal threats. Fast-acting diseases could end a life in days, and the volatile paranoia of a king who executed citizens for a misplaced whisper meant safety was never guaranteed. To understand how this metropolis actually functioned, we must look past the royal portraits and examine the massive chasm separating the filth of Cheapside from the majesty of the crown. This extreme stratification defined every interaction. Tudor society required active, daily engineering of survival just to keep the city's heart beating under such immense pressure. For the average commoner, life was abrasive and intensely physical. You wore thick, itchy woolen layers, and at night you slept in crowded inns on mattresses stuffed with literal horse straw. The economic engine driving all this survival was Cheapside Market. It was a deafening, chaotic environment where thousands of people screamed at the top of their lungs, buying, selling, and hauling massive volumes of goods to maintain their meager livelihoods. Even childhood was consumed by this economy. A 10-year-old boy would be locked into a grueling apprenticeship, destined to perform the exact same physical trade for the rest of his life in a workshop just like this one. To fuel that intense physical output, their diet was strictly functional. They ate heavy meat pottages, earthy eel pies, and drank watered-down ale for cheap, safe calories to keep their bodies moving through the workday. Every modern comfort was absent. This was a baseline existence defined by relentless labor and the constant need for caloric survival. To maintain order over this chaotic populace, the state relied on heavy physical intimidation. By 1536, the Tower of London had loomed over the city for nearly 500 years as a permanent stone manifestation of the king's threat. Extreme brutality was woven into the daily commute. London Bridge was the only river crossing, packed with over 200 buildings, forcing citizens to walk directly beneath severed heads displayed on spikes every single day. When the Crown wanted to enforce compliance, they weaponized public violence. Order ran on the visibility of the executioner's blade. But the psychological reality is found below. These killings were public entertainment, consumed by masses gathered to watch, completely desensitized to the horror. Meanwhile, information was tightly monitored. Fleet Street acted as the 1536 version of the Internet, a rapid hub where rumors and news spread like wildfire. Knowing how dangerous this was, Henry VIII implemented strict censorship of printed works to control the city's thoughts. With every head on a spike and every censored page, the state made a clear calculation. Order was far more reliable when it was enforced by public fear than by voluntary devotion. If you managed to climb out of the mud and reach the elite world of Hampton Court, the material wealth was staggering. Courtiers wore garments heavy with hand-stitched embroidery, signaling immense privilege in every thread. But that privilege was guarded by weaponized etiquette. Navigating the court meant surviving complex rules for dining cutlery, rigid seating arrangements, and strict dances like the pavane, all serving as dangerous social tests. The central irony of the court was that proximity to the crown's massive wealth meant direct exposure to Henry's volatile paranoia. In many ways, the nobles were less secure than the commoners hauling goods in Cheapside. Even the king's closest intimates walked a path toward inevitable betrayal. Queens and elite advisors routinely lost their heads the moment the king's whims shifted. Elite status in 1536 offered zero security. It merely traded the physical dangers of the street for the lethal psychological warfare of the palace. 1536 London operated as a crushing balancing act. A massive, laboring base of commoners was compressed tightly by an incredibly sharp, heavily armed top layer of royal fear. This was a system built on the extremes of filth, grueling physical exertion, and the daily threat of state-sanctioned death. Yet, despite this terrifying framework, ordinary people actively carved out space to live. They drank in taverns, danced to loud music, gossiped, and built vibrant communities right in the shadow of the executioner's block. Ultimately, the enduring heartbeat of 1536 isn't found in the silent stone of the palaces, but in the vibrant, unstoppable resilience of the people who found ways to live within such a brutal machine.